Guys, what's up? It's Debbie, and I am back with more true crimes of criminal minds. This week, the true crime that I'm going to be discussing is Derrick Smith, the Freckled-faced Killer. My sources were Wikipedia, True Crime Recaps on YouTube, Christina Randall on YouTube, allthat'sinteresting.com, Emma Kinney YouTube, and the episode of 48 Hours called Gambling on a Killer. This one is sad, y'all. 2 young lives completely wasted and 2 families torn apart. This is a really sad one. So, if you do have any triggers involving children, you might not want to watch this. The morning of August 2nd, 1993 was just like any other summer morning in Savona, New York. There was a day camp for elementary-aged children 1 block from 4-year-old Derrick Robie's house that he went to every day in the summer. His mother usually walked with him. It was only 1 block and on the same side of the road. This morning, however, Derrick's little brother, 18-month-old Dalton, was fussy. Fearing that he would be late to camp that day, he offered a solution. He asked his mother if he could walk there by himself that day. It was the first time that he had ever walked it alone, but his mother decided that it was close and he wouldn't have to cross the street, so the danger would be minimal. She kissed him bye. He said, "I love you, Mom." And that was the last time his mother ever saw him walk. That day, 13-year-old Derrick Smith was at the day camp, riding around on his bicycle in areas that were off-limit for the kids. There was a group of businessmen having a meeting in the park that day, and Derrick bumped their table with his bike. Now, I don't know if that was intentional or accidental, but he bumped it with his bike, and in one source I read that one of the grown men actually threatened to shoot Derrick. I think that's a little odd. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just thinking that's kind of a strange thing. So, anyway, Derrick was told by a camp counselor to put his bike away, and he refused and rode off. So he rode to this road that had a cul-de-sac at the end, and it happened to be Derrick Robie's road, and he was walking to the park, and Derrick wheeled up and stopped him and told him that he knew a shortcut, just like in the Criminal Minds episode. Derrick told him that he wasn't allowed to go a different way, but eventually Derrick convinced him that it would be fine. He lured him across an empty field to a wooded area, and there he strangled him. When he didn't die right away, Derrick used what he had on hand, and there were rocks around. One of them actually weighed 24 pounds, and he just started throwing them on top of Derrick. Then Derrick took Derrick's lunch out of the bag he was carrying. He ate the sandwich and the cookie, but he pulverized the banana. And then he took the Kool-Aid out of his lunchbox and poured it all over Derrick's wounds. And Derrick was afraid that somebody would hear Derrick cry out, so he decided to gag him with the paper towel that was in the lunch bag. But Derrick spit it out. So then Derrick tried the little sandwich baggie to put in his mouth, and he bit Derrick. So I don't know why he did this. Nobody seems to know why he did this. But he found a stick, and he pulled Derrick's pants down and inserted said stick. Then he just went back to the day camp as if nothing had happened. However, 5 minutes later, he went back. He said that he started thinking about how Derrick would tell someone what happened if he lived. So he went back to check on him. And then after he went to check that he was dead, he went back to the day camp like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Derrick's mother, Derrick Robie, she said she just got a terrible feeling of doom, that something just wasn't right. And looking back on that, she feels like that was Derrick telling her, letting her know that he was going. There was a storm rolling in, and she went to the day camp to pick him up because it was closing for the day due to the rain. And then when she got there, she was told that Derrick never showed up. A search party was started within 5 minutes of realizing that Derrick was missing. His body was found after 4 hours of searching. Savona was a town with only a population of 970-something people in 1993. So it was kind of considered like the Mayberry of New York. There was 1 traffic light and 2 gas stations. Sounds like the town I live in. Surely no one in this small, quiet community could do something like that. Everyone in town loved Derrick. He would sit on his bike on the sidewalk and wave at everyone, and they called him the unofficial mayor of Savona. Thinking that it was someone from out of town, roadblocks were set up to keep the perpetrator from leaving town. No one suspected Eric. Eric was born on January 22nd, 1980, to Tammy Smith. He had an older sister, and his dad would come and go. His dad left after his sister was born, but came back later and had Eric with Tammy. His dad finally left for good, and Tammy met Ted Smith. They married, and Ted adopted Eric, and then they had another child, a girl. So Eric has an older full sister and a younger half-sister. Eric's real dad would still visit, but Eric didn't know that it was his dad because he came and picked up his sister, took her to special places, brought her gifts, and he totally ignored Eric. And Eric believed that Ted was his father until the age of 9 when a bully at school told him that he was adopted. Now, I don't know how the bully knew he was adopted, but anyway, that's how I found out he was adopted. Eric was bullied very badly at school. He was short in stature and had bright red hair, freckles, and thick glasses. He had low-set, bent ears and drooled when he talked until age 9. He didn't walk until the age of 2. He also had daily temper tantrums until the age of 2, when they started to become more infrequent, although he did still have them. His mom had epilepsy, and she was pregnant with Eric, and she was put on a medication called trimethadione. And I'm not sure I said that right. I have never given this medication because it is no longer available in the U.S. Trimethadione. This drug has been discontinued in the U.S. since 1996. It causes malformed ears, cleft palate, heart and skeletal abnormalities, and developmental delay. He was set back in school twice. Now, he repeated the 2nd and the 4th grades. Now, he has a younger half-sister. So, he failed 2nd grade, ended up in class with his younger sister. So, they were in class together for a couple years, and then he failed 4th grade. So she actually passed him in school. So all of that together, I feel for this kid as much as the other child, and you might think that I'm wrong for that. I don't care. This poor child was neglected, and that is abuse. And no, it does not excuse what he did, but it ruined 2 young people's lives. We have no idea the potential they could have had, and broke 2 families apart. He didn't get any guidance or help at school from anybody. One time he actually attacked his sister, and he told his dad, quote, "I need help. I feel like I'm going to hurt someone." End quote. And his dad just told him to go punch a punching bag. So Eric left, and he came back, and his hand and his knuckles were torn open and bleeding, and his dad asked him what happened, and Eric said that he had punched a tree. And that was the end of talk about needing help. Eric had impulsivity problems and no regard for consequences, and he wet the bed until age 11 and tortured and killed animals in the neighborhood. The prosecutor described him as a budding serial killer. Now that's, if you know what the McDonald triad is, and I think this has been debunked actually, but I think they still kind of use it as a warning sign. It's wetting the bed, setting fires, and torturing or killing animals. Those three traits, those people usually grow up to have some sort of antisocial behavior. I do not know if he set fires. I did not see anywhere where it said that he set fires, but it's possible he could have. But he at least had two of the three. Derrick Robie was buried 3 days later. He loved baseball, and he was on a t-ball team coached by his dad, and he was buried in his baseball uniform. Years later, the field where he died was bulldozed, and a baseball park was made and dedicated to Derrick Robie, complete with a statue of him carved by his great-uncle. 4 days after Derrick's death, Eric went into the crime center and asked if he could help. When he was questioned by the police, he said that he hadn't seen anything that day. Later that day, he changed his story, saying that he had seen Derrick that day, but it was from across the street. He even described what Derrick was wearing, down to the type of lunch bag he was carrying, because he thought it was cool. The only problem with that was that Eric could not have seen that much detail from that distance. Also, he broke his glasses like a week or two before, and they had not been repaired yet. So he didn't have his glasses, so there's no way from that distance he could have seen what he said he saw. The next day, Eric reenacted where he rode his bike and where he saw Derrick. Later that day, the cops went to Eric's house to ask him some more questions because of some discrepancies between his statement and the other witnesses. Eric was getting upset, so they took a break, and his dad got him a glass of red Kool-Aid, not knowing the type of drink that was in Derrick's lunchbox. And when they continued to question Eric, they said he put his head down, raised his fist, and shook them and said, "You think I killed him, don't you?" And then he swept the glass of Kool-Aid off the table everywhere. His parents thought he was holding something back, but they didn't think he did it. They had no idea that he had done anything to him. They thought he had seen someone else do it or someone else go off with Derrick, and they thought that he had been threatened not to tell or was afraid to tell because he was afraid that something would happen to him. Eric then started asking the neighbor strange questions, and one of them was what would happen if they found out that a kid did it. And it was all over the news. People knew the details. And so she was a little alarmed by that, and she tried to lay a trap for him. So I guess this was a house in the neighborhood where all the kids hang out, and she made them all banana splits, knowing that a banana was pulverized out of Derrick's lunchbox. So she gave them banana splits, and Eric ate all the ice cream but didn't eat the bananas because he said he didn't like them. So not a smoking gun, I know. But still, so then the neighbor went and had a talk with Eric's mother, and then she questioned him about it, and he finally broke down and said, quote, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, I killed that little boy," end quote. And when she asked him why, he said, "I don't know." That was on August 8th, and the next day his parents took him to the police station. He was arrested and charged as an adult because murder is the only crime in New York that a 13-year-old can be tried as an adult for. Investigator John Hibbs told 48 Hours that it was difficult to listen to his confession. This was not a case of a child that had been bullied and just snapped. The trial started in July of 94. It was a battle of the experts. The prosecution saying that Eric did it because he enjoyed it, not because he was mentally ill. The prosecutor, John Tunney, said, quote, "He could have simply killed Derrick, but he chose not to. Eric continued to deal with Derrick's body because he wanted to, because he chose to, and most frighteningly, because he enjoyed it." End quote. The pediatric doctor that examined Eric for the prosecution diagnosed him with ADHD. Due to his mother's seizure medication, he was tested extensively and his hormone levels and brain function were normal. However, Eric knew that what he did was wrong, so the legal defense of insanity did not apply. The psychologist for the defense diagnosed Eric with intermittent explosive disorder. The prosecution expert disagreed with that assessment because it was rarely seen at that age. IED is characterized by explosive outbursts of anger and or violence, often to the point of rage, disproportionate to the situation. So that anger had to start somewhere. It doesn't just wait until you're an adult and then boom, you have IED. So he was having temper tantrums every day till the age of 2. So I don't understand why they are saying that you can't diagnose it in a child. Now, mental illness itself cannot be diagnosed in a child because the brain is not done developing. However, IED, although they say it's not an exception, I would believe that it is, because you can watch as your kid grows up. If temper tantrums over every little thing, they absolutely could have it or be developing it. The defense said that he disassociated during the crime, and that's why he just went back to the day camp like nothing had happened. Due to the placement of the stick, they assumed that Eric had been SA'd, and he adamantly denied it, saying that only an uncle had tried to touch him once, but he left the room. However, Eric's older sister had been SA'd by their stepfather twice, once at 11 and once at 14. And if I was her mother, the 14 would not have happened because I would have left that man. According to Ted, he was a strict disciplinarian, but others considered him abusive. In jail, Eric wrote an apology letter to Derrick's family and read it on public television. It said, quote, "I know my actions have caused a terrible loss in the Robie family, and for that I am truly sorry. I've tried to think as much as possible about what Derrick will never experience: his 16th birthday, Christmas anytime, owning his own house, graduating, going to college, getting married, his first child. If I could go back in time, I would switch places with Derrick and endure all the pain I've caused him. If it meant that he would go on living, I'd switch places, but I can't." End quote. He finished it by saying that he cannot bear the thought of, quote, "walls, razor wire, and steel metal bars for the rest of his life." End quote. Eric was sentenced to 9 years to life. He was in a juvenile facility for 3 years, then transferred to a prison for young adults, and from 2001 to 2021, he was bounced around to different prisons. He was denied parole 10 times. His first parole hearing was in 2002. And in that one, the Robie family was not allowed to attend, but they sent a letter and a video to the parole board. It was denied. In 2004, parole came up again. He told them that what he did made him feel good. He said, quote, instead of me being hurt, I was hurting someone else. He admitted that he would have killed again if he hadn't been caught. So his parole was denied again, and this went on every 2 years. Derrick Robie said that, quote, it upsets me that we have to beg to keep his killer behind bars, end quote. The Robies were interviewed by 48 Hours and were asked, will there ever be a day that you won't care? They responded, no, we will take this pain to our grave. Eric Smith was finally given parole in 2020, but did not get released until 2021 because suitable housing needed to be acquired. He was not allowed to go back to Savona to live. He now lives in Queens. He told the parole board that he wanted to get married, have kids, live a normal life. He said he was engaged to be married. A law student contacted him to ask questions about juvenile offenders in the juvenile court system, and they fell in love. On the day of Eric's release, there was a peaceful protest in Savona with people holding signs in remembrance of Derrick Robie, saying things like, justice for Derrick, and Derrick would be 33 today. Such a sad, sad case. 2 young lives thrown away and 2 families torn apart. The Robie said, quote, he has been released, but in a way, so have we, end quote. So that is the story of Eric Smith, the Freckled-faced Killer. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think he should have been given parole? Do you think he should have been allowed to go back and live in Savona? Do you think he's really engaged to be married? Let me know all your ideas and thoughts about it down in the comments below. And if you want to hear about the Criminal Minds episode that I believe was based on this case, check out my previous video. And remember, be kind to people, love your family, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Don't forget to subscribe!